You know, I've not gotten involved with Bitcoin, and I wake up every day at 3 in the morning and I'm like, why am I such an idiot? What have I been waiting for, not being involved in it? And it just goes up and up. In the past, I think this is interesting, the retail investors, they were much faster at getting involved with Bitcoin than the institutional ones.
Even the most forward-thinking minds in technology occasionally miss what's right in front of them. Philippe Laffont, a man managing over $55 billion and long hailed for spotting the next big thing in tech, now finds himself haunted by one glaring omission: Bitcoin. In this story, we follow Laffont's candid reflection on a digital asset he once dismissed, only to now regret not owning. Through his unfiltered commentary on AI, cloud transitions, shifting global markets, and emerging winners in tech, his evolving stance on Bitcoin becomes not just an admission, but a warning.
But given your sort of thesis, do you say to yourself, even at this point in the ballgame, if you think it's going to double or triple and going to be part of the Nasdaq 100, if you were to think of it as a company?
Yes, I have to think about it.
That you should own it now?
Yes, I have to think about it now. Do I own it now? Do I own it tomorrow? In a few days? But every day, I do think, why do I not own it? And I think to be a good investor, it's not just like owning the obvious stock, but sometimes you have to change your mind and you have to just say, well, I made a mistake and I'm changing my mind, and maybe Bitcoin will be that.
How do you come up?
This moment of self-awareness isn't just financial strategy, it's humility. Laffont doesn't pretend to have been right all along. Instead, he uses his own hesitation to highlight how the investment world works, by reevaluating, adapting, and owning your mistakes. Even when you're managing billions, missing Bitcoin means wrestling with the same doubts that ordinary investors feel, only on a much bigger scale.
Recently, Bitcoin, when it went down during the tariff, only went down as much as Nasdaq. So it seems the volatility as an asset class is coming down, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Given your
Volatility has long been the institutional excuse for ignoring Bitcoin. But now, even seasoned tech investors are starting to acknowledge a shift. Bitcoin's wild swings have mellowed, at least relative to other high-risk assets, forcing figures like Laffont to re-examine their preconceived metrics of risk and return. When the numbers start looking more familiar, so does the opportunity.
Then we added Bitcoin. We thought of Bitcoin as a company. Today, I think Bitcoin is 2 trillion. And we're like, well, could it get to also 4 or 5 trillion? Obviously, Bitcoin's not a company. It'd be like saying if gold's a company, but I thought it was interesting as a new asset.
Yeah.
Framing Bitcoin as if it were a company reveals how seriously it's now being taken by those who once viewed it as fringe. In Laffont's view, it's not just a speculative token anymore, it's competing with gold, measured in trillions, and potentially even being modeled into the future Nasdaq itself. This reframing signals a major philosophical shift among top-tier investors.
And I felt like this year maybe is a change. And if you remember a few years ago, the Max 7 was called the FANG index, and then the FANG++. These indices change. And we were thinking, like this year, there's some Max 7s that have worked out well, some that haven't. Is it the change of the guard?
And you think this is it?
I think this is it.
In the background of Bitcoin's rise is a larger disruption in tech, the end of the old guard. What was once called the FANG index is now fragmenting, and Laffont sees this as a moment of transition. In such times, emerging assets like Bitcoin can move from fringe to central within just a few years. For him, the clock isn't just ticking on catching up. It might already be running out.
There's going to be some changes.
So who are the half a dozen winners that replace them then?
So we looked at the, let's say, top 25 companies and what happens to them every 5 years. And some of them just drop out. They run fast, but they don't run as fast as the others. Then you've got some new IPOs that come in. Is OpenAI going to be part of the Max 7 of the future? Is SpaceX going to be part of the Max 7? And so we try to recombine the index and imagine what's, we're here today, Nasdaq 100. What's the Nasdaq 100 5 years out?
And who's on it then?
When reimagining the top tier of the tech world, Laffont includes names like OpenAI and SpaceX. But quietly, He's also envisioning Bitcoin as part of this elite roster. This mental exercise, projecting forward into the next generation of market leaders, frames Bitcoin not just as a currency or store of value, but as a dominant fixture in the global tech economy.
So I thought like the market cap of the world, the net worth of the world is,
Yes.
I think, 450 to 500.
True.
Equities are, let's say, 120. Gold above and under the ground is 20.
20
And then Bitcoin is 2 trillion. And I was like, okay, well, 2 trillion, let's say it represents 0.5% of the net worth of the world. Could it go to 1 or 2?
The bigger picture starts to take shape when Bitcoin is viewed through the lens of global wealth distribution. Here, Laffont calculates Bitcoin's current share and compares it with plausible future stakes. Even a marginal shift in global asset allocation would spell exponential growth. For an investor of his caliber, this isn't hype, it's pure math.
And then we talked about the de-dollarization of the world, the end of US exceptionalism. So those would be some of the reasons.
It's not just about growth, it's about necessity. The world's evolving financial order is shifting away from a dollar-dominated system. Bitcoin, as a decentralized and finite asset, is increasingly seen as a hedge against this uncertainty. Laffont doesn't say this lightly. For someone deeply rooted in global markets, the implications are massive.
And I always thought Bitcoin's amazing, but it's double or triple the volatility of the Nasdaq. Nasdaq's already pretty volatile. Why do I need to deal with this added volatility?
This quote underscores the mindset that kept many institutional players on the sidelines. High volatility was seen as a wall, not a challenge to scale. But the barrier that once kept Bitcoin at bay is now shrinking, and Laffont knows it. What used to be a deal breaker is becoming a footnote in broader conversations about long-term value.
I think maybe 2 years ago and 1 year ago, some people were saying, look, the return is not there. This is crazy. We're in a bubble. But when you speak to companies now, the amount of AI that they're implementing, the savings that they're getting, and if you think of the world economy, I think just in the US, labor is maybe 20 trillion, the savings that we could get off that. You look at Microsoft, their number of employees is going down. Amazon, Andy Jassy.
You just had Andy Jassy at your event.
He was unequivocal that basically the number of employees over the long run is going to go down. Those are the benefits of AI. And so I tend to see like the glass is maybe half full and half empty, but I'm very much on the half.
Laffont's optimism about AI mirrors his evolving attitude toward Bitcoin. Both technologies were ridiculed, both volatile in early days, and both poised to transform the future. His shift from skepticism to cautious enthusiasm highlights how trailblazers in tech are learning to reframe uncertainty as a springboard, not a setback. Philippe Laffont's reflections provide rare insight into how a top-tier investor grapples with missed opportunities, evolving technologies, and the pressure to adapt. From his early dismissal of Bitcoin to his now haunting 3 a.m. self-questioning, we've seen how even the most informed minds can hesitate in the face of paradigm shifts. His broader commentary on AI, asset classes, and global markets shows a man standing at the intersection of what was and what's coming next.
To be a good investor, it's not just like owning the obvious stock, but sometimes you have to change your mind and you have to just say, well, I made a mistake and I'm changing my mind, and maybe Bitcoin will be that.
Now it's time to hear from you. Do you think Laffont is right to second-guess his stance on Bitcoin, or is it already too late to get in? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.